The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more.
Since the pandemic, obviously we switched to that remote and now hybrid environment, but it's not changing anytime soon, because if you look at how low the unemployment rate is, especially how much demand there is for solar talent and storage talent within our industry, it's really hard to enforce that go back to the office mentality, because not only do the candidates say no because they're employed right now working a remote job, but you're also going to do yourself a disservice when it comes to finding local talent or getting local talent to relocate, because then you're taking a very small candidate pool and just making it even smaller. So not being open to a hybrid environment like CPS is just, it's hurting your recruitment efforts. It's hurting you from getting that top talent.
Are you speeding the energy transition? Here at the Clean Power Hour, our hosts Tim Montague and John Weaver bring you the best in solar, batteries, and clean technologies every week. Want to go deeper into decarbonization? We do too. We're here to help you understand and command the commercial, residential, and utility solar, wind, and storage industries. So let's get to it. Together we can speed the energy transition.
Welcome to the Clean Power Hour Live. I'm Tim Montague, your host. Today on the Clean Power Hour, Solar Workforce Mastery, Proven Tactics for Talent Acquisition and Retention, featuring industry experts from CPS America and EnergeiaWorks, who will share proven tactics for talent acquisition and retention in the rapidly growing solar sector. I want to remind our listeners that you can check out all of our content at cleanpowerhour.com. Please subscribe to the show there, including our YouTube channel, and connect with me on LinkedIn. I love hearing from my listeners. I want to thank CPS America for sponsoring this event and all of my content on the Clean Power Hour. Today we have an expert panel, including John Drummond, Senior Applications Engineer with CPS America, William Liuzza, Founder and CEO of EnergeiaWorks, Ryan Pasquali, Recruiting Specialist for CPS America, and Matt Dolansky, Associate Director of Customer Success at EnergeiaWorks, who will be answering my and your questions. You can type your questions into the Q&A, so please do so, and we will answer them live here on air. We are going to start with some introductions from our panelists and then get into the heart of the matter. As our listeners know, the solar and storage industry are growing like wildfire, and unemployment in the United States is very low. It is around 4%, which is virtually zero, which means there is a war for talent. Recruiting and retaining the best and brightest is a game changer. It means the difference between success and not in the solar and storage industry. So I'm looking forward to this discussion. With that, I'll hand it over to our panelists to give a brief introduction of themselves and why they care about this topic so much. Why don't we start with you, John Drummond?
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Good morning. Hello, everyone. I'm John Drummond, Senior Applications Engineer with Chint Power Systems. I've been with CPS for going on my 9th year now. It's pretty impressive, I think, in the industry for people to stick around with the same company. But I cut my teeth in renewable energy way back in the late 90s and have worked for various inverter manufacturers in various roles. I was a laboratory technician. I was a project manager. I then worked my way into product development, compliance and testing, and also application engineering. And then made the transition to CPS in 2015. And happy to be here. So thank you.
Thank you. And William Liuzza.
Thanks, Tim. So I'm William Liuzza. I'm the founder and CEO of EnergeiaWorks. I have 25 years in talent acquisition and recruitment. The last 14 has been with EnergeiaWorks, where we exclusively support the renewable energy industry, both upstream and downstream markets within the industry. Been working with CPS since 2011, when I met the former general manager, Ed Cox, at SPI. And in 2015, as John just mentioned, we found John Drummond, introduced him to Ed at SPI, and he was successfully hired, going on 9 years now. Among many other current employees and former employees at CPS, we helped them find. Over the last 14 years, we've helped over 350 companies find talent acquisition around the world. The majority of the geography that we cover is North America, but we have successful placements in the Asia Pacific market, Caribbean and Latin America, as well as Western Europe. We are a 20-person company headquartered out of Jersey City, New Jersey, with a satellite office in Calgary. And that's where Matt Dolansky is based. And I'll pass it over to Matt, tell you a little bit about himself.
Wonderful. Matt Dolansky.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, William. And thank you, Tim. Happy to be on today. So as William mentioned, I'm our Associate Director of Customer Success based out of our satellite office in Calgary, Alberta. Although right now I am in sunny Houston, Texas, attending RE+ Texas on behalf of the company. I'm relatively new to the clean energy space. I've been around energy production most of my life. I grew up in the Canadian oil patch, but about 2 years ago was approached to join EnergeiaWorks and have been drinking from the fire hose of renewable energy ever since. I had the opportunity to meet CPS really for the first time about a year ago at ACP. Got to start working with Ryan last fall. And since then, it's been a really productive relationship and a great insight into the work that CPS is doing and how we can support them along with the other companies that we support at EnergeiaWorks.
Thank you. And last but not least, Ryan Pasquali.
Yeah, no, it's great to be here. I'm excited to kind of share the panels with you guys. I've been with CPS for about a year now. Full time, I was intern with them before that prior. Recently graduated college, and I think what makes it unique to be in this position, I've worn a few different hats with CPS, and I've kind of really fell into the groove with recruiting in the sense that I get to interact obviously with Energia, but then help build the culture, and I share the passion with Brian Wagner, our president and GM now. The passion for winning, the passion for building a strong, CPS, strong, culture here. And I'm excited to kind of share those insights with you guys here today, and interact with that, and just keep building that brand and awareness and attracting more top tier talent.
Creating a culture is a theme that you're going to hear over and over today. And we're going to talk about CPS, but we're going to talk about recruiting and retaining technology talent generally, right? The clean energy transition involves many, many types of professionals and tradespeople, and we want this to be useful to the entire spectrum. But I think it would be good to set the table a little bit, because we have an amazing story in the career of John Drummond here that was facilitated by EnergeiaWorks. So it's just a really nice way to just introduce this topic, because John is somebody who truly could work for one of many, many manufacturers or other, he could work for a developer. He could work for any kind of a clean energy company that he wanted to. And yet he has chosen to join and now stay at CPS America for 9 years, which is really a long time in the clean energy transition. The average tenure of clean energy professionals, correct me if I'm wrong, William, is around 18 to 24 months. It's just a couple of years. And so John does stand out, and there are very good reasons why John is not alone at CPS. And obviously, it's a spectrum in terms of people, how long they've been in their careers, period. But when you joined CPS, John, you were already an established clean energy professional in the inverter space, and you had serious technology expertise. And truly, the world is your oyster, because solar and storage is growing so fast. There are so many new entrants, but also just massive growth within the established industry. So I don't know if you want to make any comments about my introduction of this, William, before we get into John's story.
You know, I actually would appreciate that. Thanks for handing it off. And you alluded to this earlier. So I'll set the stage a little bit. In December of 2021, the unemployment rate in the US dropped below 4% for the first time in a very long time. And it has, since then, it has hit historic lows at 3.5%. And something you also said, Tim, is like within our industry since then, we've really had a 0% unemployment rate. And that still remains the same. It's slightly different now over the past year with the interest rate and some residential companies that have gone out of business. But in the business to consumer side of the solar industry, which is what we focus on and what CPS focuses on, it's still a very, very low unemployment rate. So talent acquisition has been a struggle. And when you think about human capital within the solar industry, it's got to be the perfect balance of supply and demand. And since November of 2020, we've seen that supply and demand be completely off balance. There's a lot more companies hiring and a lot less people available. And that just makes recruiting in our industry very challenging. And what I always tell my customers, and what I always have Matt tell our customers as well, is like, we can control that recruiting piece, but what are you doing when it comes to retention? Because even if we help you on the recruiting side and you're not doing anything for retention, you're going to be coming back to us, you're going to be spending money, and you're going to have new positions, and you're going to have your team recruited away by somebody else. So you have to focus on both sides of that equation.
Very much, very much. And it's not easy. And it's ironic because when I say that we're going to hear a lot about the culture at CPS America, you would think it would be a complete no-brainer for companies to truly try to set themselves apart by having a very specific culture and going out of their way to build a culture of teamwork, for example, which is one of the themes we see at CPS. But many companies just kind of take culture for granted and let it emerge organically and are not very explicit or intentional. So, John Drummond, tell us a little bit, give us the Cliff Notes version. And by the way, John was on the show, so if you want to learn more about John's backstory, check out the Clean Power Hour at cleanpowerhour.com. But John, what was it that enticed you to go to CPS in the first place and stay there now for 9 years?
Yeah, yeah, great question. Well, I was in a position where I was ready to move from my previous employer onto another position, in the renewable energy space. And I was looking at opportunities and interviewed with several different places, and then through EnergeiaWorks, was able to be introduced to Ed Hecox, as William mentioned, and Casey Miller, who are kind of our founding fathers of CPS, I'll call them. These were the two gentlemen that brought CPS to the U.S. The parent company, Chint Group, of CPS, is a global, electrical component manufacturer. They manufacture inverters for Asia, Europe, several different markets, and they had not come into the North American market. So Ed and Casey were the first to start that, and they essentially established the company about 2012. And it happened to be a Solar Power International show in San Francisco when it used to be there every summer. And I happened to be walking the floor on the recommendation of EnergeiaWorks and met Ed and Casey and chatted with them briefly about they happen to have a position open for an application engineer. I had that experience in my tool belt, and just speaking with them, talking a little bit about the company culture, looking at the innovation of the products that they were manufacturing, things like separable wire boxes and other features of the product, it seemed like, wow, this is initially on the outside a great company. I think I'm going to pursue this a little more. So a few weeks later, I had an interview, and we got a little deeper dive into kind of the inner workings of CPS. And I will say, we keep saying that we're going to kind of use the word culture quite a bit, but their culture there was one of transparency, inclusion, not only for their employees, but I will say for their customers. They shared with me that they had a problem with one of their inverters, and rather than covering it up, they decided to be proactive. Now, this problem tended to be systemic among several different manufacturers. And those manufacturers were hiding it and saying, oh my gosh, no, this is going to be a catastrophe. Well, these guys took it head on and were proactive with their customers and said, we've identified an issue. It may not be affected to your product, but we want to come out and make a change for you, free of charge on our dime. And I was thinking, wow, that's really tremendous of these guys to do that. And, it's been that way, since I joined. I was hired that fall. And since I joined, it's been kind of the same MO ever since. Just being transparent, inclusion, collaborative. I mean, I can go on with a lot of different adjectives, but for me, it was the right landing place. I really felt like, I was validated. There was lots of affirmation there with my talent. So it was just a really good fit.
I love that piece, the transparency piece. And this goes for companies and individuals, right?
Yes.
And so I'm curious, William or Matt, if either of you have some comments about when you are recruiting for, obviously you're working with dozens and dozens of different clean energy companies, but I would love to hear, what is it that you're looking for in candidates when you're meeting these people for the first time? And is there something that to look for in people when you're recruiting for CPS?
Yeah, happy to jump in there, Tim, and that's a great question. And the first step is that we are able to act as an extension of CPS out into the marketplace and represent that culture to potential candidates. And when we're starting to have those conversations with candidates, it's not just about walking through their resume, tell me the bullet points you have on there in so many words. It's, let's get in between the lines. What are you really looking for? What is it that you think you can bring to a company? And what is important for you to find in a company? You may have all the skill sets in the world that check off every single box, but there's that separate checklist as well that we want to make sure that there's that firm alignment. And prior to being in professional recruitment, I'd spent some time in post-secondary recruitment. And something I'd always say to students that really carries over to the professional space as well is we want to make sure that you're not just a fit for the company, but the company is a fit for you. If that fit isn't there, if that alignment isn't there, you're setting yourself up for failure essentially from day one of introducing the candidate to the client.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a conundrum. And one of the things, I served as a recruiter for 5 years, both in creative and technology. And you never want a square peg in a round hole scenario. Even though a person may check off some key boxes in terms of skill sets or background that an employer is looking for, it's just never going to turn out well if you're trying to force an issue. By the same token, I think sometimes companies can be very closed-minded about who they will consider hiring. The example that rears its head time and time again is that companies want candidates to have very specific experience or experiences and skill sets. And I'm like, you are missing the boat. You want people who are eager to learn and bring us a variety of skills And it would be great if they knew your industry inside and out. That would be wonderful. But please consider people who don't necessarily come with the checklist entirely checked off, but who come instead with some dynamic qualities that are going to serve you in so many ways down the line and are able to grow and evolve with you as the company grows. This is a very fast evolving industry, and so all of us have to be fleet of foot, both the companies and the employees. It's a two-way street because the only constant is change. So I don't know, Ryan or William, if either of you have comments about what we've touched on here so far.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hop in real quick. I mean, I think you just kind of hit the nail on the head there. For CPS America, I mean, I've got the privilege of obviously working with Brian Wagner and William and Matt. We look for people that are, bring that quote unquote X factor. It's not always all about the skills and your education. And there's a lot that goes into the quote unquote perfect candidate. And I think for us, it is, how can you grow with us? We're 103, 104 people at the moment. We've hired 20 or 30 people this first quarter and going into end of Q4 last year in total. And I think last year we had 98% retention. So just the overall growth and culture we're trying to build, the winning mentality, the people we bring on, we're trying to reiterate that, throughout the company and organization. And John, the fact you've been with us for 9 years, well before my time, it's amazing to hear your perspective on what you're seeing and how it's been consistent. But yeah, I love what you said, Tim, about kind of that X factor. And, it's not all about just pure skills, pure qualifications. It's the person that we bring in. And Matt, I know we've worked a ton together in that aspect of it. And it's just exciting to kind of hear all that being put together and just kind of come together there.
And I would venture that that's not easy to identify. And this is why there is an industry for recruiters, right? You guys have to figure out how to identify that X factor. And I'm curious, Matt and William, what comments you have about how do you figure out who has what X factor or not?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'll say that obviously CPS has done a great job of both the recruitment and the retention side, right? But Matt, you've managed 40 accounts over the last 2 years. John talked about the integrity that CPS has with their product and their customers and the transparency that the company has as well. But in addition to those two things, what else do you think CPS has that helps them with that retention and the recruiting piece that you haven't seen with their other customers?
What's made this such a successful partnership right out of the gate is transparency with us to be and trust in us to be that extension of CPS into the marketplace. But it's also been a very organic process. I frequently joke that there are days where I speak with Ryan more than I speak with my own fiance, but it's really been a successful partnership because there's been that dialogue between us. And I know exactly how he is going to present the company to our candidates. And I know that I can trust to put our candidates in front of him and with anyone else in the room at CPS, because the message is going to be so consistent. The culture is such that every person at CPS America that our candidates have spoken to have gotten the same message throughout the interview process. And that's something that our candidates have come back to us and said, it's refreshing to hear from each step in the company, from our first introduction with Ryan as a recruitment specialist, through to a hiring manager, through to maybe some of the team members I may be working with, and having that consistency of message and culture across the organization. It builds a culture of trust before the candidate is even hired and ends up becoming an employee. And then when we've checked it with candidates who we've successfully placed at CPS, they'll come back to us and say, it wasn't just a facade to get me in the door, to get me to put my name on that dotted line. It really is an organizational belief in having that transparency and creating that culture of welcomeness and inclusivity at CPS America.
I love it that you are so clear that you are partners with one another, EnergeiaWorks and CPS America. And this is also something that I think that differentiates CPS America. It sees itself as part of a network of relationships. And Many companies see business in a more transactional way, and CPS is very relational. It is building relationships and partnerships with its customers, with its vendors, and it almost feels awkward to use the word vendor, because I know that CPS doesn't see those companies that way. They see them as partners, being on the same team ultimately of getting the energy transition done and growing together and growing successfully. We all have challenges in the energy transition. One of them is recruiting and retaining top talent, but there are a myriad of other challenges. And so if we can find ways to be successful, it's good for the company and it's good for the employees when things work out and employees stick around. It's just much more efficient, right? A company pours a lot of resources into new employees, and for them to end up walking away, after just a couple of years is a huge loss. And so if you're serious about growing a long-term successful company, you have to be very, very serious about retaining top talent. You have to be able to get them on board, but more importantly, I think you have to retain them. I don't know if any of our panelists want to comment more about what companies can do to successfully retain not just average performers, but top performers.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and John, if you want to jump in here too at some point, for me, a title that's been thrown around kind of unofficially is that of like a productivity coach and people operations. And I think the culture we're trying to build, the aspect we're trying to build here is I want to, once I bring someone on, that's step one, as you touched on a few times. That's just kind of the start of the process, and it's the 6 to 9 month period thereafter where I'm enabling them in their role, helping remove any kind of pain points. A lot of the company is remote. They're not in office with me or in office with John in Pleasanton. They could be in Oklahoma or Montana or all over the place, right? So how do we bring that human interaction, that personal touch there, bring them out to meet people in the company? And I think just having them feel connected to the company and the people around them, making them feel supported and at the end of the day enabled to carry out their job and connected to the rest of the company, I think is a huge aspect of that. And that's, I think, one of the biggest aspects of retaining employees is that connection feeling to the rest of the company.
Yeah, I'll echo that. When we bring on somebody, we do a lot of training, as you mentioned, mentoring and so forth. But it's more than that. It's inclusion and making them feel like they're valued, and that they also have opportunity here with us, opportunity for growth. And there has been several people that have joined, and I'll use my manager now as an example, Anton Patton. He started about 6 years ago as a business development engineer, and became an application engineer, and then became a manager, and now he's the director of products and applications engineering. And yeah, I mean, it's an amazing story for him, and it's almost like I'm proud of him, because I remember him coming aboard and training and bringing him on. But it's not only training in terms of retention. It's I'll go back to the inclusion and the affirmation. It's the team building aspect, and CPS does a really great job of that. We do it at every trade show. We often go to these trade shows, but we do, our own events where we work together, bring everybody together. We often have motivational speakers that come that, get us all on the same page. Just kind of building that internal relationship. I mean, you think about the people you work with, and Matt mentioned, even his conversations with Ryan are more than he talks to with his fiance. But, it's like you spend more time with these people than you do at home. So you want to be sure that they're happy and that they are included and they feel valued, that they're contributing. So that whole aspect is another part of what I really liked about CPS. I felt that from, day one for me all the way through. And, and we've had some growing pains through the years, but right now we're on a big growth spurt. We're also developing a lot of new products. So we have to have a team to support that. So as Ryan mentioned, we hired 20 new people, but it's not just hiring. It's, also the onboarding and doing the things that we can retain this talent and keep them online and allow them growth within the company, opportunities. So that's, I think, a big piece of it.
You said, go ahead.
I would just point out, just being genuine. I think, as obvious as that might sound, I think nowadays, and an aspect I think Matt can echo too, is me being genuine and I care about everyone I bring on. I think I'm in RE Plus Houston today too with Matt. I'm excited to see two of our new employees that are down here. Like, just that genuine aspect of caring about the people, caring about our new employees, how they're doing. I think unfortunately that's not seen in a ton of companies nowadays, and I think CPS is one of the most genuine companies that you will find, and I think that speaks a lot to what we're trying to do here for sure.
You said something, Ryan, about your employees, many of them being remote, and this is a double edge. Employees generally want flexibility from the employer on remote work. Many employees want to be fully remote or in a hybrid situation, but there is a downside to that. And I'm curious if you guys, any of you, can comment on what you see CPS doing or others to cross that bridge, so to speak, because creating a culture takes face time. We are very tribal animals, we humans. We have to get to know one another before we can trust one another and be vulnerable. This culture of transparency is awesome, right? But it doesn't come naturally. Sometimes we've learned as younger people or professionals to hide our mistakes and not share them or, confront them face on, so to speak. So what does CPS do, and what can others or are others doing to enhance this phenomenon of the hybrid work life that Americans have gotten so used to?
Yeah, I think, CPS, whenever we win, which we're very fortunate to be a very winning company and be very successful, but bringing people together where it's end of the quarters, or big events like RE Plus Anaheim coming up this year, or InterSolar earlier this year, getting 50, 60, 70, 80 members of our team all in one location, having those 2 or 3 days or a day or two prior to the event, day or two after, to get everyone together, celebrate the win from the end of that year, or closing of a quarter, success there, and feeling that all as a team is huge. We're just in Napa Valley as a sales training and leadership summit, where we just kind of get together, and it's a couple days of training, but then there's all the team events around that we build specifically to help create that culture and that face-to-face. It's not an everyday thing where you're constantly in office, sure, but it's getting everyone together to align in mentality, celebrate the wins of the company, and then build that together together, and nothing really replaces that. I don't think we'll ever fully get away from that where it's pure remote. I think we find people want to be together in those couple of days and celebrate that. And then that kind of jumpstarts everyone else, where they then feel, again, empowered and invigorated to continue that down to the rest of the company.
Yeah, and I'll jump in there, Tim. Since the pandemic, obviously we switched to that remote and now hybrid environment, but it's not changing anytime soon, because if you look at how low the unemployment rate is, especially how much demand there is for solar talent and storage talent within our industry, it's really hard to enforce that go back to the office mentality, because not only do the candidates say no because they're employed right now working a remote job, but you're also going to do yourself a disservice when it comes to finding local talent or getting local talent to relocate, because then you're taking a very small candidate pool and just making it even smaller. So not being open to a hybrid environment like CPS is just, it's hurting your recruitment efforts. It's hurting you from getting that top talent.
Yeah, just to add on there, and you asked the question, Tim, about building culture in a remote and hybrid environment. It's a challenge. I've been in my professional career now for about 10 years. I've even pre-pandemic was lucky enough to be remote and working from home, but there were times where it did feel a little isolationist even. And it's a challenge we face even at EnergeiaWorks with our team spread out across North America. I think for companies to be successful, they have to avoid a couple of pitfalls. They need to accept that you can't be all things to all people, because your team is going to be your team's inherent strength is in their differences and what they can bring to your company. So by trying to provide a one-size-fits-all solution to building culture to those employees, it's never going to work, and it's a bit of a fool's errand to try and do it out of the gate. I think the other thing is to avoid is making assumptions about what your employees need in terms of culture in a remote or hybrid environment, particularly remote, where you may not be seeing these people face to face for weeks or months at a time. It's fantastic, and I think CPS has done a phenomenal job at bringing their teams together at the events that Ryan mentioned. But for companies who that's not an option for, going to your employees and saying, what is it that you need? What can we provide to you? Sometimes you will get a little bit of hesitancy, or employees may not feel comfortable really being honest about what they need. But that comes back to establishing a strong culture of trust and authenticity and transparency right out of the gate. So they are comfortable telling you, this is what I would like, or these are the types of events or connections that I would like to have with my company and with my colleagues.
The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more. It really is a fine line that we all have to walk, because even though unemployment is very low, which means that the employee has more leverage, so to speak, you also, as an employee, have to remember that you're part of an organization, part of a team, that if you don't do certain things that are socially acceptable or operate in certain ways, it's going to be disruptive, and it's going to hurt your career. So it's not like employees have carte blanche. There's still very much a burden on the employee to be a good employee. And maybe the definition of that has ebbed and flowed over the years. I don't know, John, if you have any thoughts about that. How are things different today, in the market than they were 9 years ago when you went to CPS? Obviously, the market has changed dramatically. It is growing much faster. But that aside, how do you think things have changed?
Well, definitely the remote aspect. Everyone used to report to an office, way back when, and independent of what your job role was. If you needed to be at that site or not, you reported to the office. And that seemed to change, as William mentioned, during the pandemic and then afterwards into a hybrid role. But, that aspect is much different now, where people are wanting, candidates are wanting to pick and choose, like Matt was saying, I want to be remote. That is not always the best option. When we hire, even when people are remote, we bring them in, for training. There might be a week or 2 weeks of onboarding process. And then even afterwards, there might be, hey, can you come into the office 1 or 2 days a week? Just to make sure we're all on the same page, we're collaborating, we're bringing you up to speed, and we're not just, relying on you, remote. And again, it's that trust and integrity aspect, but also just making sure that they're comfortable, that they're not just being left, to their own devices, essentially, by working remotely. That I see as a big change. The aspect of reporting to an office versus the option to do hybrid or solely remote. That's a big one.
One of the things that is on a lot of people's minds in the solar industry is how markets ebb and flow. One of our listeners commented about, NEM 3.0 devastating the residential solar market, and they asked if this is causing an influx of employees in other markets. And certainly, some of those, the statistic that sticks in my mind is like 13,000 residential solar workers are now looking for opportunity elsewhere. Of course, some of them are going to find their way to other places. I mean, California is a lovely place to live in many respects. It has a wonderful climate. It's a very dynamic technology forward economy. The solar industry is more mature there than anywhere else in the U.S., et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the cost of living is very high. The traffic is horrible in some of the major metros. There is a downside. But what are some of the trends that the industry is experiencing and that employers or candidates can lean into, so to speak, to benefit themselves? And I certainly William has a very good purview of this, but if others have comments.
Yeah, I mean, NEM 3.0 is not a very favorable situation in California. You put that together with the high interest rates, and it really makes residential solar, the market in California is just not good right now. And there's other markets that are affecting it that aren't dealing with NEM 3.0 because of the interest rates. So I think purchasing some residential solar systems, that industry is getting hurt. But sometimes those people, that business to consumer model doesn't always directly translate to a B2B market, like in the CNI, the community solar, and the utility scale space. So some of those people just don't have the same skill sets to be reemployed or even upskilled into the B2B side of solar. So I think it's going to be difficult for most of those people to make those transitions. We have seen some of them. There are some product companies like CPS in particular and others that do have like a residential product that maybe they could transition into. But if you look at a lot of people that were affected by the layoffs in California in particular in the residential solar space, they're the salespeople, the canvassers doing PV design work, all the light voltage stuff. So I don't know if a lot of those people can be employed into the larger scale solar systems. But Matt, maybe you have a different view on that than I do.
No, I would agree largely with what you said there, William. That challenge is really on the candidate side of things. We can preach reskilling and upskilling to employers and provide those options. And, hopefully the market will provide those options for candidates. But due to it kind of comes back to the checklist conversation we were having earlier, where there are some non-negotiable boxes on that checklist for employers, and a lot of it is to do with scale and with experience at scale.
And kind of the second point of that question, Matt, is on that Q&A question is, have we seen an influx of those residential candidates coming in, or do you think they're trying to find work elsewhere outside of like the solar industry? Maybe they have a tainted view now of what's going on because of NEM 3.0 and the interest rate.
We have seen some of that. We, in our current work, haven't seen a huge influx of the residential candidates yet. It may be yet to come as NEM 3.0 continues to take effect. In speaking with candidates that have left the residential space, I am hearkened back a little bit to my roots in conventional power generation, where they're looking to get off the roller coaster. They're sick of the boom and bust, and want something a little bit more stable. And stability is something that candidates, not just from the residential side of things, but from all technologies, all scales, are looking for. And that, again, is something that CPS brings with a lot of success in their attraction and retention of talent, is that they are providing that level of stability for potential employees to join the organization.
I'm glad you mentioned the solar coaster. There is a boom and bust phenomenon in the solar industry, which tends to be geographically regional. Markets get programs, incentives, and they boom. And then those incentives fade away, are used up, phase out for various reasons. And there can be a bust. And, net metering is one of these things, right? You need a few things to make a robust market. And so in some ways, the solar industry is unique in that regard. In other ways, it is typical of technology, right? Like telecom. Telecom boomed and then telecom busted because the market basically got saturated, right? We had all of the infrastructure that we needed for everyone to have a cell phone. And so there wasn't this fast and furious growth of the telecom industry. And people just went to other industries. And in many ways, solar is no different. Eventually, solar will mature to a point where it doesn't grow the way it's growing. But that's 30 years away, frankly. So, but the boom and the bust is just kind of part and parcel. And so if you're going to be a dyed-in-the-wool solar and storage professional, you're going to have to put up with a certain amount of that boom and bust in regional markets. That is kind of part of our industry in the way that we do clean energy in the United States, certainly, right? It's a state-by-state phenomenon generally. And while California is having its troubles, other places are in full boom mode, right? You go to Texas or here in the Midwest, Illinois and Minnesota, or out east, New York and Massachusetts and New Jersey. And those are some of the prime markets. But so if you're looking for work in the solar industry coming from another industry, just go to a big solar company's website and look at where they're operating, a Sunrun, for example, right? And you'll see a map with 20 states that they're focused on, and those are the good solar states. Our panelists here today are covering the entire country. CPS has offices in New Jersey, in Texas, and in California. And EnergeiaWorks, while it's headquartered in New Jersey, I'm venturing that you have employees in many, many places, right, William?
We do, yes.
So anyway, I don't know if we don't need to belabor this point too much, but in terms of companies' abilities to recruit and retain top talent, in our last few minutes together, I guess I'd like us to just come back to home on that and pinpoint a few key things. I've heard some themes that I just want to reiterate: transparency, integrity, trust, partnership, and investing in one another. Like when an employee goes to a company, the company is investing in that employee, and vice versa. The employee is investing in the future of the company. And when the company really sees it that way, as a two-way partnership, I think good things happen and growth emerges and loyalty emerges. And if the company is loyal to its employees, you will get loyalty from the employees to the company. So what all do you have to say about what are the best practices that our audience and our listeners can take away from this?
I mean, I think for us, it's like you said, the transparency, the loyalty aspect. And I think Energia, you guys have worked with us to kind of have this pairing where we want our employees to want to work with us. Like we want to encourage you to grow within us. Like our first aspect whenever we post a role is to hire internally. Right. And give those growth opportunities, to give that structure to where you're not just pigeonholed into, the one role you applied for and you got brought in for. Like, we want to offer those growth opportunities, give you that foundational aspect to build your career within CPS. And to that point, we won't just hire to hire. Like we never hired to fill a role just to do it. It's always to find the right person that we feel, wants to be with CPS long term. can give just as much into us as we want to give into you and help you grow professionally, develop you. So it's a very, like you said, a very two-way street, and that's a culture and mindset that we embrace here. And we're excited to partner with Energia to continue that and get that message out, because I don't think that that's necessarily common nowadays, unfortunately. And I think it's something that we're trying to do that's relatively unique, and we're happy to kind of continue expanding that with everyone.
Thanks, Ryan. And I'll jump in there for a minute, Tim. Ryan talks a lot about that transparency, that honesty, and the integrity that CPS has. And I think the reason the relationship with EnergeiaWorks works so well is because we share similar core values and similar culture. I always enjoy it when I'm out at a conference and trade show, and I get to see CPS in action dealing with their customers. And I'll give you a really good example of that. Last month, I was in Philadelphia for Solar and Storage Live, and a CPS customer came over to the booth and was talking with Brian Wagner and Brian Baxter. And Brian Baxter is the sales director for the East Coast. And you could just tell immediately that there was a trust factor. And the customer was telling Brian about a new project that he's looking to do. And Brian Baxter is like, well, yeah, we could do it with this product, but guess what? We have a new product that's coming out that's going to work a lot better. And here's how that would look. And there was no doubt in that customer's mind that Brian was honest and telling him about the best solution, not just trying to sell him another product. And that's a difference in having those core values and having that transparency, not only with your employees, but also with your customers as well. So you're not just selling a product, you have that trust factor.
And that's not easy, because there's a lot of pressure on companies to grow and sell, right? But providing the best solution is certainly going to create the best long-term relationship. What are your thoughts, John?
Yeah, exactly. I'll echo what William said. I mean, building those partnerships, we're not just selling inverters. We want to establish a relationship with you so that you are a returning customer, and we build that relationship so we can win together. Your next project, we would hope that you would use CPS inverters. If we have a new product that, we're unveiling, we hope that you would consider using that. It may benefit you in a way, less inverters, big power, greater power level, more features, balance of system equipment that would complement it. Again, it's back to that partnership and that collaboration. And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but culture, integrity, trust, it's not just internal from employee to employee, but it's business to business. It's that partnership.
I would love to get any other closing comments or thoughts from our panelists. I want to thank all of our listeners for being here. Check out all of our content at cleanpowerhour.com. But this is an exciting time in the energy transition. We are going to 10x the solar industry in the next 30 years. It is, in some ways, unimaginable how much growth is going on, and this means opportunity for people and companies. It's a both and. If you play your cards right. And, for example, on the employee side, encouraging or going after certifications is, I think, very, very important. NABCEP certification in the solar industry, for example, is a great thing. And companies should support their employees in pursuing that certification, because what it does is it creates a floor of general knowledge and capabilities that we all have, which is going to help us provide more consistent and better solutions to the market, right? In any fast-growing industry, there is a certain amount of a gold rush going on, right? And you see this in the popular press, right? That some solar companies have created a bad name for the solar industry by not treating consumers very well. And that's just the nature of any fast-growing industry. There is a certain gold rush. But what all do you have to say in your closing comments about building a sustainable industry?
I think, for CPS, we've got a very strong history of winning, a very strong history of just being consistent, great customer service. I think that, to tie back to this webinar, I think it starts all with the employees and the internal team. The culture we bring here, the attitude that we have, team member to team member, is what translates to that great customer service, that great interaction out there in the industry, and allows us to be consistently, one of the top companies in the industry, number one market share for all these years. And I think that it begins with who we hire, and it begins with the culture we instill in them, and what motivates them one to one. And I'm excited to see what the future holds with Energia, who we can bring in, continue to grow the company, the culture, and how we can continue improving this industry.
Yeah, and I'll jump in with some final thoughts just on attracting top talent, bringing it back around. We chatted about the checklist. You do need to have some flexibility on that checklist to attract that top talent, and to whether that's understanding that they may not check every single box, but they bring that dynamicism to the role, to your organization, and understanding the candidate from very much a 360 picture of who they are, and not just who they are on a piece of paper that lists their curricula vitae. You want to understand and have a conversation with them about, okay, maybe you don't have exactly 100% of the things that we were looking for when we were hiring for this role, but you had some things that we didn't consider, and those are the types of personality traits or work experience or skills that we want to bring into our company that is going to help us weather the storm and weather those boom bust cycles. We see you as a valued partner in that, and we want to add that to our organization. And then once you have them in the organization, to retain them, continue delivering on that initial message and that initial value offering to them as an employee. That's where the trust piece comes in. That's where the transparency piece comes in. When we hear candidates that are looking to make a move, sometimes it's, what you would expect. It's, I'd like to make a little bit more money, or I feel like I've hit my ceiling here. But in other times, we'll hear from candidates, particularly those who may not have a particularly long stint on their resume with their current organization, that I was brought in, I was sold a certain bill of goods, and then when upon arrival discovered that was not the case. I don't know that I can trust my organization to ever deliver on that, so I want to go to an organization that will.
Yeah, and echoing what Matt said, because there's such a demand for talent in our industry, and there has been for almost 4 years now, sometimes it's refreshing to get somebody that thinks different. We're starting to see companies that come to us say, hey, we have all commercial solar experts. We want somebody that thinks outside of the commercial solar world, because we're all thinking the same. So help us find somebody that hasn't worked in that industry, and we can upskill them on what they don't know about solar. So I think that's a refreshing, and we're starting to see that more and more these days.
Yeah, I love that theme. Be more flexible, be more open-minded, focus on the X factor. I also love that expression. So thank you, Ryan. John Drummond, any final comments?
Yeah, I'll just say, what Ryan shared, and both what Matt shared about building the internal team first, and setting the right expectations for the client when they are job hunting. And then once they hire, making sure that they are happy in their role, and that their support, their contribution will support our customers, that we can, build the internal relationships employee to employee, but back again to business, that, we care about what our customers are purchasing, their projects, and want to support them in every way, and hope that the candidates that we're finding will strive to that.
Well said. Well, I want to thank our panelists. John Drummond, Senior Applications Engineer with CPS America. William Liuzza, Founder and CEO of EnergeiaWorks. Ryan Pasquali, Recruiting Specialist for CPS America. And Matt Dolansky, Associate Director of Customer Success at EnergeiaWorks. You all have really made substantive contributions to this conversation. Thank you so much. Thank you to all our listeners who are here live and on the recorded session. Check out all of our content at cleanpowerhour.com. Go to the events tab for our upcoming webinars and reach out to me on LinkedIn. I love connecting with my listeners, and I want to thank, again, CPS America for sponsoring this content. With that, I will say, I'm Tim Montague. Let's grow solar and storage. Thank you all so much. Have a great day. Hey, listeners. This is Tim. I want to give a shout out to all of you. I do this for you twice a week. Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving us your time. I really appreciate you and what you're all about. You are part and parcel of the energy transition, whether you're an energy professional today or an aspiring energy professional. So thank you. I want to let you know that the Clean Power Hour has launched a listener survey, and it would mean so much to me if you would go to cleanpowerhour.com, click on the About Us link right there on the main navigation. That takes you to the About page, and you'll see a big graphic, Listener Survey. Just click on that graphic, and it takes just a couple of minutes. If you fill out the survey, I will send you a lovely baseball cap with our logo on it. The other thing I want our listeners to know is that this podcast is made possible by corporate sponsors. We have Chin Power Systems, the leading three-phase string inverter manufacturer in North America. So check out CPS America. But we are very actively looking for additional support to make this show work. And you see here our media kit with all the sponsor benefits and statistics about the show. You know, we're dropping 2 episodes a week. We have now over 320,000 downloads on YouTube, and we're getting about 45,000 downloads per month. So this is a great way to bring your brand to our listeners, and our listeners are decision makers in clean energy. This includes project executives, engineers, finance, project management, and many other professionals who are making decisions about and developing, designing, installing, and making possible clean energy projects. So check out cleanpowerhour.com, both our listener survey on the About Us and our media kit, and become a sponsor today. Thank you so much. Let's grow solar and storage. The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chinpowersystems.com to find out more.